And Mr. DeLauder, how are you?
Very good, sir. Thank you. And how are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good. Thank you. Nice to be seen at this advanced stage in life.
Yeah, tell me about it. No comment, Marmy.
I didn't say a word.
They say better than viewed.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Loomis, if my view looked like that, I'd be adjusting my screen.
Well, can't help what I can do, man.
Man, all the wisecracks coming from Don tonight. Jeez.
I'm done.
Hey, at least I got my internet back.
Yeah, I was a little concerned about that. I'm glad to see that.
Okay, I think, and Doug Marmy and Don maybe chime in on this. We have so many people on the line. If you're not involved in whatever committee is currently being discussed, is currently in session, like we do for council members, I think we probably need to mute and turn off your camera. Because if not, there's going to be some people not be able to be seen. Because we are now almost to 30 people.
I'm not sure how to do that, Spence.
Well,
Yeah, I can do
do
it
you?
for you.
Yeah,
I'll do it for
Dave.
you.
Mine doesn't shut off.
No, I got it. I got it.
The first committee will be finance.
I didn't want to start pushing buttons.
I'm with you.
Everything.
Okay, there you go.
Well, thank
But
you.
you can still hear.
Okay.
I'll give my personnel.
Yes, yeah. Okay, thanks.
All right, we are going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Lang, Harris, Bub, Blake, and Marmy. First item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $25,000.
And I believe that's for me. This is for merchant fees. We are using a company to collect money for online payments through our software, Open Edge and Global Payments. And we started doing a few things differently the last quarter last year, the first of this year, and trying to get more people online. And then, of course, so we're looking at that, and then the pandemic hit, and so we just kept doing that. And so these are not all credit card fees. These are what we call merchant fees, which we have to pay for the service to have that on our website. But some of it does include credit card fees.
Ball's incomplete, intended for number 32, Ian Lovell. Brings up 4th and goal for the Panthers.
Okay, I don't know what that was, but
4th and goal for the Panthers, Raj.
but anyway, so that's what the $25,000 is. That is to pay for the rest of the year of this. We're probably going to switch how we do business a little bit here after this pandemic thing sets down. We didn't want to shut down all of our online. We're not going to shut down all of our online payments, but we're probably going to shut down how we do credit cards after the first of the year, probably because of the office shut down, everything. We figured we needed to continue to do that so that people weren't coming into the office as much. So, so that's why we got these, and this money's going to come out of our water and sewer funds. So,
I'll offer a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, that was a motion by Lang, a second by Bub. Any questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by thumbs up. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Roger. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $40,566.63.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are monies from the damage to the ball field. We're just wanting to get those reappropriated into the building maintenance of grounds account.
I'll offer a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Bub, second by Lang. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Blake.
Director Rhodes, this is for Don Edwards Park
Yes, it is. It's for damages that were occurred there
from the flooding or?
from the flooding. We also had a wind damage there too.
Okay, 'cause I thought we had previously appropriated some money for the flooding damage. That wasn't enough or?
We had these are monies that are reimbursed, and these are monies that will go back into my buildings maintenance and ground account. If they're not used, which we're trying to hold on to every penny we can, we'll just roll it back into the general fund. It'll roll over to the opening balance of next year.
Thank you.
Right, so these are reimbursed dollars, and we already spent the money to do the repairs. These were reimbursement amounts, so we're just putting it back into the account to replenish that account that we already spent the money from.
Exactly right.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by thumbs up. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $14,000.
I believe that's me again. We did a lot of work and upfront from our several projects that we have going on, the 4th Street project and the 40th Street project and Arlington Avenue. And so we spent quite a bit of money. So we'd have to spend it with our contractors. We spent our own money and did it with our own crews. And so we just need to reappropriate that money back in those hydrant supplies. We did a lot of hydrant work upfront. That's what this is for. So this will be coming out of the water funds.
I'll offer a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Bub, second by Lang. Any questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by thumbs up. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $28,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a payout for a retiring police officer.
Offer a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Bub, second by Lang. Any questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by thumbs up. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. And next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $7,310.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are state grants for police overtime.
Offer a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Bub, second by Lang. Questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by thumbs up. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, this Finance Committee meeting stands adjourned. Next up, I believe, is service.
Actually, next up is safety. There won't be a service committee meeting tonight.
I'm sorry, safety is next.
All right, I'd like to call this Safety Committee meeting of the New York City Council to order. Present are myself, council members Barker, Fennell, Blake, and Rath as well. This evening, we have asked Deb Tinkmeyer to be with us and present some findings from a committee that's been working over the past few months on homelessness and kind of where they're currently at and kind of next steps as well. So Deb, we're glad that you could be here. If you could just make sure you unmute yourself and we will give you the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't know if Doug Marmee is still around, but it's good to see him again. Once upon a time, he was on our board of directors just a couple of years ago. So today I am here to, for those of you who don't know, I'm the executive director for the Licking County Coalition for Housing. But I had been part of the Licking County Task Force on Homelessness at the invitation of Deanne DeLauder and Deb Dingus, who way back in late 2018 started actually talking about the issue. And that led to putting together an advisory group, task force, all kinds of things. But to make a long story short, we are here today having done a lot of the work, at least in terms of coming up with a plan. And I can go back and revisit a couple of things if you'd like. You know, Jonathan had been very involved in a number of the task force meetings. Mark, I think you might have been as well. And we do appreciate the support of the City of Newark. Between the City of Newark and the Licking County Commissioners, both were the highest contributors. While there were a total of 10 major contributors to this effort, you guys put in the most money. So happy to report. I would like to think the money was well spent, but we are just really getting started, to be perfectly honest. The work specifically of the task force had set out to raise the funds, and many thanks to Deb Dingus and Dan DeLauder for having done so. But the real work happened when we put together a request for proposals, and that went out last May. I got proposals back in June. By August, the task force had just made their selections. Contracts were negotiated and issued as of September. So the work really got going in October of 2019. All of which is a pretty fast track, frankly, in my experience. So the work got started in October. There were public meetings in December and of course in early January. And in addition to all of that, there were some stakeholder interviews. Much of this has been, included in the report, so I won't, spend time reading it to you. But we know that we worked very hard to try and get as much input from the community as possible. Between the stakeholder interviews were just a way of trying to shape the initial conversations. But with the online survey, which we got 300 to 400 responses on, which was fabulous. I mean, it was a lot. Between those online surveys, which again helped to shape some of the questions and the direction for this particular plan, by the time we got to those task force meetings, and I say task force, at that point, again, some of you know, based on what was coming back in terms of topic areas that were of the most importance or being raised by the greatest number of people in all of those surveys and conversations. We designed some topic areas. Analytic Insight helped us to create those topic areas and then conduct those in-person conversations. You may remember that. It wasn't that long ago, even though it seems like it was forever. But the first week in January, weather held off. We did a fine job, got a lot of information through that process. Since then, and it was from that plus some other writing and the research that that AI did. The report was initially produced and a draft arrived in late March. The task force spent some time reviewing it, actually a lot of time reviewing it, made some constructive criticisms, revised a few things. But at long last, by the end of July, We had the final, and by August, the task force was formally approving it. And so as of September 1, I believe you all got copies. So here's where we are. Lots of really good information. But now it's time to actually do the work. Even though I feel like, personally, I've been involved for a long time now. I have done a lot of work. The reality is we now need to make some decisions and get some people on board to actually do so. So for starters, the Licking County Coalition for Housing Board of Directors, at our meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., this is the primary topic. What is it? Of all the action steps recommended, the priorities suggested by the community, what is it that the Licking County Coalition for Housing is able to take on? We can't take all of it on, but what portions can we take on? What portions do we want a part of in terms of working with others? So in that sense, I can't say too much more about next steps because I haven't given my board of directors the opportunity to hash through and do that. But I wanted you to be aware that we have taken this very seriously. Clearly, they allowed me to spend a lot of my time on this. They saw it as an extremely important effort on behalf of the community. So now we're going to move to try and take those next steps. So that's a piece of it. I can also say that there are others who have read the report as well and are starting to step forward and say, wow, that looks really interesting. I would like to be a part of trying to make something happen. For example, for those of you who know whole living recovery, a fabulous program. They're interested in being a part of some of the work on the peer mentoring, for example, which is one of the several suggestions under the permanent supportive housing and case management. I would want to say that the way this particular report was laid out, it didn't really, while there's a timeline for things, it really didn't lay out any one priority over another. And I think that's important to recognize. I know I have my favorites, but more along the things I know I or my team or my board of directors may have some abilities around or some other connections that can help make some of those happen. So I guess I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. So our next steps relative to that are really not only encouraging people to step forward. I believe we will also have some level of go out and ask, which again, I need to wait for my board of directors to let me know to what end they would like to do that, or to what extent they want me to be involved in doing certain things. So there's still work to be done, obviously. We've got the AI report. And I guess before I go any further, do any of you have any specific questions about the AI report? I'm assuming that you've all read it, but I also don't want to assume all that necessarily. So were there any specific questions about the AI report I can help with?
Let me interject quickly then. Thank you for that, for the update and kind of where things are at currently and where we think it might be moving forward next. I certainly appreciate that as much as you can speak to that. If someone does have a question, I would just ask that maybe you raise your hand so I can see you, number one. But number two, before you speak, if you could just state your name and address for the record, I would appreciate it. So if you do have a question, if you are on screen, just feel free to raise your hand and I will try to find you as quickly as I can. Stephen Smith, if you would please unmute.
Yeah, Stephen Smith, 237 Violet Court, Newark, Ohio. Main question I have right now is this report publicly available? Can I get a copy of it? I did have the opportunity to sit in on all of the meetings we had last January, and so I'm interested in seeing what happened. And I just want to thank the Coalition on Housing's effort on this and emphasize that we do need to take the next step. Is one thing we can't do on this is nothing. We've got to address this issue. And there have been a number of studies that say it is cheaper to provide services to homeless than to not provide them in the long run over the whole system.
Thank you, Steve. It's very good to see you. I have been wondering about you and your health. The two of you were so active, and I really am very glad to see you here this evening. Yes, we will have, I don't know that we've placed one there yet. We do intend to put one in a copy of the final report at the main branch of the library. It is also available, if it isn't, it will be. I believe we've got it available. You can get it, a copy of it in a link to the Licking County Coalition for Housing's website.
Okay.
I believe we also had made that announcement during the course of doing this. We put together a rather lengthy email list we've been using to try and keep people up to date. But if it wasn't attached to that, it's certainly attached to the Housing Coalition's website. So I would encourage you to go there. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
Yes, Mrs. Smith, I see your hand. Sorry about that.
Hi, Rochelle Boland Smith, 237 Violet Court. Wanted to know how to continue to be involved in this project.
Well, I think the short answer, the most immediate answer to that question is if there's one or more of those initiatives that you like, that you want to get involved in, each of the initiatives does set out an action plan, almost all of which start with convene a group. So, and with a list of some recommendations about who ought to be a part of that group. Now, I guess depending on how much initiative you want, if you would want to look at that and feel free to contact some of those agencies or organizations and press on.
Been doing that.
So, I mean, that's the very short answer. I'd like to think that we'll be able to be a little bit more formal in a few days, weeks, but that's the immediate one. So,
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Pound, I believe you had your hand raised.
Yes, Mark, did you call on me?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay, thanks. I'm Trisha Pound, 36 West Channel Street. I am just here as a social worker and concerned resident, and also an active member of the task force. Deb, I was wondering if you mentioned a lot about AI's report. I was wondering if you could share with the committee the results that Sally Lucan had given to the task force.
Well, which piece of what? I'm not sure what we're asking, Trish. She's provided a lot of information, which I've in turn turned over to Deb Dingus and Dan DeLauder. And Dan's going to take it and run with it as far as that's concerned. And I spoke with Sally this morning, and she's giving me more information she's been very professional about providing all kinds of information. So
I think that the committee here would like you to also then provide that information. Since she does not want to work with us anymore, I think it's important that we have that discussion. Because as a member of the task force, there are a lot of changes that occurred suddenly that we weren't made aware of until several days later. And the letter that Sally wrote to us said that she believes our community doesn't want a low barrier shelter. And as someone that is a social worker in that community and knows very much that how much we really need it, it's alarming to me that a professional would say that they feel like we don't need a shelter or want a shelter. So I feel like it's some information that we should talk openly about and share publicly, that a consultant that the city helped fund doesn't want to work with us anymore.
Well, I'm not sure I would characterize some of the things that you just said quite the same way.
Feel free to correct me, provide the information.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that. But it's not finished in terms of a finished product for a low barrier shelter. So, I mean, just so
The
we can
consultant's
be
work
clear
is
about
not
that.
finished?
I'm sorry?
What's not finished? I'm talking about Sally Lucan's work. That's not finished? She's still going to work with us?
The short answer to that is she sent us a stop work notice, which all of the Newark City Council all has. So
Could I interject for just a second, please?
Sure.
Mr. Delatter, I believe you had your hand raised. Did you want to speak to this point, sir?
Sorry, Mark, did you address me, Delatter?
Yes, please, if you could. Yes.
Thank you. I thought that's what you said. I apologize. For the record, Dan Delatter, 635 Howell Drive, Newark, Ohio. And in my volunteer capacity with Newark Development Partners as chair, representing our board on the task force that Tricia is referencing and Deb has referenced as well, along with a host of others, individuals. And I wish to thank, first of all, the city of Newark for your support and helping fund the kind of work that was done. It was extensive, and you will receive a good return on your investment. I have every expectation of that. Ms. Tegmeyer has already addressed the Analytic Insight report, which is comprehensive and I think provides a wealth of information and recommendations that can be implemented. I would give a host of social service organizations within Lincoln County. So that by far was the most significant outcome of the two-pronged attack that we levied in chronic homelessness. So that's what AI, Analytic Insight, undertook as a consultancy, and the report is what you all have. And then was to hire Sally Lukens, as referenced by Ms. Pound, to address the issue of a low barrier emergency shelter. A number of things were accomplished by Sally and her work through the process, not the least of which was to confirm that, yes, indeed, Licking County does have a need for additional emergency shelter space. We thought that frankly was what initiated the collaboration with United Way at the very beginning, is to address this issue of homelessness on a more active and formal basis. So Ms. Lukens was contracted to address the shelter side of the equation. And she did in fact confirm the need. So that was, we didn't really have to hire somebody to tell us that. We knew that, of course, but nonetheless, officially as a professional and have her confirmation was.
Dan, I'm referring to the letter that she said that
Tricia, I have a few more things to say, and I'll try to get to your point. So for the benefit of the committee, the thing that she confirmed was the location on East Main Street, the former Family Dollar Center, was indeed adequate as a good location. Thirdly, she engaged a number of volunteers to work with an architect within the community to do preliminary design work on the facility. A good bit of that work has been done. So we have different iterations, maybe three. Fred Ernest can tell you better than I, but we've had good work with an architect on the design. We found a wonderful supporter of the effort who in fact purchased the building, which was a critical first step to have a shelters to find somewhere to buy it. So the Thomas Evans Foundation stepped up and made that acquisition for us. So we got an awful lot accomplished. I think in that respect, Ms. Lucan decided to resign from her engagement. The stop work letter we received from her, Ms. Tegmeyer has talked to her and since receiving that, and Deb, you can say this better than I, but she's agreed to send to us an electronic file of all the effort that she put forth, including RFP work and other consultancy work she did on our behalf that we can use as a community as we go forward. Deb, you can probably expand on what you might expect to get from that. And so, Tricia, to your comment about her statement of believing, or a statement I think you said to the effect that she didn't think that this community wanted to.
I'm just reciting what she wrote in a letter.
Sorry?
I'm just repeating what she wrote in a letter.
Excuse me. Ms. Bama, I appreciate your input, but I need to call on you before we speak. So Mr. DeLauder
Oh,
has,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. DeLauder has the floor at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't, I can't speak to that particular point that you're addressing. Maybe Ms. Tegmeyer can answer that better than I, but she offered other reasons that I do recall for reasons to wanting to discontinue for personal family issues and challenges that she felt she had to address and may not have the kind of time necessary to devote to this. I would also, to the committee, try to help you understand that the task force was a group of volunteers, and I'm so grateful for their willingness to step forward and be actively engaged in multiple facets of these needs within our community. I would also say that for most of us, it's not our day job. It's the volunteer side of the equation. We have, because of that, had some challenges of trying to get some things done on a more timely basis. For example, in my employment, I don't have the luxury of saying I'll work on that when I have free time. In my paying job, I have to get things done on a very timely basis. In a volunteer community, we get things done as our volunteers can collaborate and work through a volunteer schedule. So it took more time than, frankly, I would like to have seen taken, but nonetheless, the AI report was very, very good, I think. Great piece of information. And Sally Lukens helped us get a good bit of work done on the homeless shelter, but there's plenty of work that remains to be done in that respect, without a question. But in my humble opinion, that work can get done. It's wide open to anybody in the community who would like to take that project on for themselves. As Ms. Tegmeyer knows, I've requested a small group of volunteers to do some additional work on that shelter to pick up where Sally Lukens left off. First of all, to receive her draft of a request for proposal that will go out to qualified service providers of the shelter. And we have had 4 possibilities in that respect, 2 of which have declined an invitation to be considered, but the other 2 are actively considered being the operator of the shelter. So they will certainly be on the list for the RFP. We will also try to find others, including both in Licking County as well as in Franklin County, who would be a potential operator for the shelter. So that has to be done. And that's a critical next step, because the last thing you want to do at this juncture would be going to start renovating a building and then find a service provider, an operator, who then would want to come in and make changes in the physical facility to serve their needs. So the very next thing that needs to get done is to get a service provider, an operator of the facility identified, to a request for a proposal to a myriad of activities that need to be done to qualify for low barrier shelter, to provide the financial backing and evidence of their ability to operate shelter and have a history of successful operation of a shelter as well. So to say a myriad of activities are in front of us as a community. There is not a formal organization that I believe is in place to do that today. So that's why I've talked privately with organizations who would have an interest in helping move forward on that. That's how I would respond. Again, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate what you have done, and certainly what the city of Newark has provided in terms of financial support and moral support for this much needed effort as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLauder. I believe Irene Kennedy had her hand raised. If you could speak next, please.
My question was answered. I was wondering where to get a copy of the report. Now, will we get a copy of the other report, the one on the low barrier shelter?
Sally is not preparing. It was never contracted to prepare a report. So there was never intent. There will not be a report, because that isn't what she was hired to do. She was hired to do a feasibility study, which she completed. She was hired to assist in doing some assembling some design work, and there are iterations around that. So she's provided an excellent platform for the next step.
And what will the next step be?
Well, Dan just said he's convening another group to pick it up and go from there.
And anyone is available, anyone can join your group, Mr. DeLauder? Did you say that it's open to anyone?
I'm saying what's open to anyone in the community is to take up the task of operating a shelter if they wish, to take the steps necessary to move forward with the shelter. I, in my humble opinion, Mr. Chairman, if I may answer that question. In my humble opinion, a very small working group is appropriate to take the next steps to address the physical facilities. And before that can begin, an operator needs to be identified, and working with that operator to the final design on the facility, raise the funds to improve the facility so it can be operated as a low barrier shelter, assure that there's operating funds available to operate the shelter, and then get the doors open. So those are the pretty fundamental and basic steps that I see are in front of us as a community need. I'm willing to work in my spare time with other volunteers to do that. If somebody is part of this call or this committee meeting as a citizen would like to volunteer the services, you can raise your hand and let me know. My number is public, but I'll give it to y'all at 740-349-3746 is bank, and 740-328-9221 is my personal number. Feel free to call me.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. DeLauder. I believe Alicia Ferris, I saw your hand next. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, hi, my name is Alicia Farias, 116 Smithview Drive, Newark. So you're saying that there are, 42 people on this call, so I think this is a really important issue for a lot of people, and a lot of people are expecting transparency with this process because citizen dollars were used to pay for these studies. So is it possible for us to see this feasibility study from Sally, which was paid for by the city council put in a bunch of money, right? And then, for people to be a part of hiring, this service provider, I think that also requires some input from citizens and not just from a hand-picked group of people that we don't even know who they are. So I think the transparency is what we're asking for. There are a lot of people on this call who are working with the homeless and have, a genuine interest in this. And also the legislation that is happening at 7 o'clock at the next meeting. Will there be a vote at the 7 o'clock meeting? Because I think that's the other thing, that there may be a vote at the city council meeting, and we want to make sure that all of our questions are answered before that is that vote goes through.
Mr. Blake, I believe your hand raised. But...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Deb Tegmeyer, and for coming tonight and presenting the reports to us tonight. And thank you, Mr. DeLauder, for your work and effort on serving on the task force. I also wanted to make the committee aware that, Deb Dingus with United Way was another, client as it regards to these two consultants, and she is on the call. And so at some point, you probably want to recognize Director Dingus to provide some input as far as the United Way, because it was a partnership between Newark Development Partners and the United Way of Licking County. So she is on the call to provide input on this. I want to ask, and I guess I do have, I did read the 105-page report from AI, and I want to compliment, because on page 22, it talks about how compassionate our service providers are in wanting to deal with the homeless issues, homeless, unsheltered folks, and wanting to be, try to get some type of result. And so I think as far as data is concerned, that page 22 showing that, the compassion and peaceful way at which people are being addressed is something to be applauded. And so I think that's a positive thing that I read as far as the data is concerned. I think almost 70% of the respondents said that, compassion to the people experiencing homelessness was very, very good from our service providers. So that's a compliment to the agencies that are working with our folks. The thing that does concern me, however, is that on page 21 and page 28, it talks about coordination efforts. And there seems to be very much a need for coordination amongst, I mean, these consultants have come back and said to us that we have these great organizations working in our community, but they're not really coordinating efforts together. And the report also has 2 recommendations for a public entity to be developed, either a new nonprofit to oversee the efforts of dealing with housing and homelessness, or there also being another additional CIC to focus specifically on housing and homelessness. And so I just want to raise that to the committee's attention that, you know, I'm probably one of the few on the call that did read all 105 pages, but the report is good. And I think we should seriously consider these recommendations. But I just most definitely wanted to recognize for the chairman to let you know that Deb Dingus is on the call. And I'm sure she has some feedback as another client to these consultants.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. I believe Nancy Waylu, I saw your hand raised. If you would speak, please.
Thank you. Nancy Waylu, 7441 Stewart Road. First, I do want to thank all the work the task force has done. I also, like Mr. DeLauder, work full-time and serve on several different committees. Plus, I'm committed to the Newark Homeless Outreach every Saturday. So it is a difficult task when you're volunteering lots of hours. So I totally get it. I guess I have a couple questions. I'm not sure who can answer, either Deb Tegmeyer or Deb Dingus or Dan DeLauder, who seem to be the 3 moving pieces here. So does this mean the task force is now null and void, or is their work considered done? Deb Tegmeyer, you said that Dan DeLauder is going to take, when Tricia was asking about the Sally Lucan report, you said Dan DeLauder is going to take it and run with it. I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean what he was talking about, forming a small group of volunteers? Is that what that means? And so, okay, so my next question is, you talked about the dollar store having some preliminary architectural plans. Is that, who owns that? Does the task force own those plans? Is it public? Does Mr. DeLauder own it? Does the United Way? Is that something that the public can see, along with some of the recommendations that the Lucan, Miss Lucan recommended? I guess I'm just really confused where this is all going. And I do believe that we need it to be under a public entity for that very reason, for transparency, because a lot of us that are out here are just really confused about how this is all coming about. Thank you.
Ms. Tegmeyer, I don't know if you wanted to address some of those, or Mr. DeLauder possibly, either of you, if you'd like to address that.
Deb, why don't I start? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nancy, good questions. I can tell you that the property was purchased by the Thomas J. Evans Foundation, a local charitable organization who owns a number of properties in Newark and Licking County that they then lease to operators of social service organizations. Largely, I can't say exclusively. I'm not on their board. I'm not related to the Thomas Evans Foundation. I simply know all the good that they do in our community. And they very graciously agreed to make the purchase of the facility and hold it until such time as a tenant could be found to operate a shelter. So that really is what's next. I'm not going to operate a shelter. I don't know a thing about operating a shelter, but I do understand business practices. And in my humble opinion, the next step is to apply business practices to move forward to find out how we can get an operator to help us design that facility and then raise the monies to improve the facility. And I don't know who that's going to be. A good example, though, we have 2 in this community today who are operating shelters. One would be the St. Francis de Sales Society, operating a shelter for homeless males in our community. And secondly, the Salvation Army, which I know pretty well because I'm on their advisory board and have been for about 2 years or so. In both cases, they're qualified operators, and both are candidates to operate that shelter. At some point in time, whatever operator steps forward to do this may or may not be a public entity, as been suggested, Salvation Army is not a public entity, as an example. Neither is St. Vincent de Paul Society. They are a private organization. So, but they have a charter to address specific needs that they've identified. Both have expressed an interest in being considered as the operator for this low barrier shelter as well. But it's still early to say that only the two would be asked to participate. So I'm not trying to be hiding some kind of a shroud or something, but really want to try to get some things done and then turn this over to people who can, most importantly, operate the shelter and meet the needs of the homeless in our community. We need more beds. It's as simple as that. We didn't need a consultant to tell us that, but it was good to have that confirmation. Without question, we need more beds in our community. So let's get on with it. And so that's one of the business practices that I want to apologize for. I want to try to move this thing along more quickly and try to get some things done to move forward so that we can have a functioning organization in our community addressing clearly the needs that exist. That's my only motivation.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. DeLauder. I believe I have about 3 more hands raised, and then we do have another committee after this, but Mr. Fennell, I know you've had your hand raised for a while. Could you please answer or ask a question if you'd like to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I also would like to give my thanks to Deb Tegmeyer for coming and presenting for us today and for all of the hard work that you have done on this. I really do appreciate it. Dan DeLauder, thank you so much for your tenacity and making sure that you want to make sure that this happens. And Deb Dingus as well for helping and bringing the United Way into this group. And that is actually one thing I really would like to hear before we move on. We've heard great information from Mr. DeLauder and Ms. Tegmeyer, and I would really like to hear the United Way's kind of perspective on this and get their input. I appreciate that Deb Dingus was able to join us today, and I just really think it's important that we are also able to get that that perspective, since United Way was also on that contract. So I would really appreciate that. If I can just ask one more question, Mr. Chair. So basically, one thing I was wondering specifically, Deb Tegmeyer, this might be a question that you might be able to answer for me. What services did we not get from Sally Lucan that we had contracted her for? And is there any kind of refund that she will be issuing because she did not complete her contract? Thank you.
The 2 quick answers in lieu of recognizing time. Sean, there were a couple of things, but probably the primary thing was that we did not get a chance to do the 6 steps of the, she had a phrase for it, but the gist of it was a group of people, some local leadership and a wide variety, police, judges, all kinds of folks, to get fully trained on both what a low barrier shelter is, and then develop the communication tools in order to try and help the rest of the community understand and support it. We had, normally that would have been done in person. Because of COVID-19, she was going to have to take time, and did take some time to convert it to what would have been some online training, but we could never quite get that scheduled. So that did not happen. However, we won't see a refund because she didn't bill us for that. She only billed for what she did. So she didn't, we didn't pay her for what she didn't do. How about that?
All right, I see 2 more hands. First, Deb Dingus, and then Melissa Lanter. So Deb, if you could speak, if you would unmute and speak, please. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, everybody. And I want to thank Jeremy for inviting me to attend tonight. And want to thank the Newark City Council so much for providing financial support for all of the work that the task force has been doing, and for their care and concern for the homeless and the issues that we've been addressing over the last few years. Just as a way of context and a little bit of history, Dan is correct in saying that we know that we need a low barrier shelter. We know that the Family Dollar store would be an ideal location because of its proximity to all of the other supportive services that will be need to really provide for a true low barrier shelter. So we agree with that. Just as a way of context as well, to remind you that this whole process was needed. Back in 2016, many of you participated in the community blueprint, which identified as one of the priorities safe and affordable housing. I believe folks from the city as well as dollars were contributed to that community blueprint as well. And so out of that, one of the things that I deeply became passionately interested in was this issue of homelessness and unsheltered. And if you take that definition, you're going to get a variety of different answers from a variety of people, including our educators, including HUD, and including those that are in the industry of providing shelter. From there, United Way spent about a year doing some research. We worked, and I worked greatly with the director of Lutheran Social Services, Larry Crowell, who also used to be the boss of our Sally Lucan, who was leading one of the consulting processes for us. And one of the questions that we kept getting back is, can you provide data? What kind of coordinated system do you have? Do you really need another shelter or low barrier shelter? April 17th, 2018, Larry sent back an email stating that he had talked with the providers. And at that time, it was felt in the community that a barrier shelter was not needed at this time, nor could it be proven that a shelter would be needed. They wanted a demand analysis done. We did not have the hard data to do that. So providing for these studies and these reports were necessary to provide data and information so that anybody coming in and moving this issue forward could say with certainty and clarity, yes, there's a need. Yes, the community agrees. There's hard data to back it up. So that was very, very important. We all agreed as a task force that the AI report was complete. And there was a lot of hard work done on behalf of the entire task force. And so I want to thank Deb Tegmeyer. She was the liaison and spokesperson between the consultants and the task force for that, and put together the meetings that were held for the community and organized all of that. So a great deal of work was put into that. And very thankful to the donors that contributed these dollars. I've heard from many of them throughout this process. They're also very heavily invested in what's going to come out of this process for our community. The low barrier shelter piece of it, I was not directly involved in a smaller group that was working with Sally Lucan directly. It was understanding that a smaller group was charged with helping to gather the information, as you've already heard, for the architectural plans and some of the other cost analysis. I was not in on those conversations with her in regards to the full extent of why that process has ended. A great deal of information has been gathered. What we can agree on is that, yes, we need a low barrier shelter. We needed it really years ago. And we have to do our due diligence and have to heed the cries of so many people in our community who are hurting to provide a shelter of some sort. How we do that, I think that's still the question before us. But I do want to back up, first of all, to the AI report. Someone had asked too, what are the next steps? How do I get involved? I will let you know that United Way has been very committed. I've talked with our executive board. We've also had preliminary conversations with AI, and we will be arranging an opportunity for analytical insight to come back and to do one last sharing with the community, and to solicit input from the community in regards to interest in being involved with the various aspects of that. and as well as talking about how do we coordinate all of those pieces so that they move forward together in concert, because some really wonderful recommendations were made. But as Deb Tegmeyer said, which one happens first, in what order, how do these all move together? So United Way really has an interest, along with a few other community partners in moving this forward. I will also let you know that over the last particularly 8 or 9 months, we also have another business owner, philanthropist, who is purchased some land and is in the process of beginning conversations around another permanent supportive housing development, as well as a potential shelter. And I wanted Newark to be aware of that. The other thing that I would say is very important, and some of you may agree or not agree. I've also been a part of about the last year and a half with MORPC, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, who has also just completed a very comprehensive regional housing strategy with some suggestions on trust funds. How do we move forward with such a low stock of housing available? We all know that we need more housing stock. I know Deb's organization is very concerned about that. So we can get people into housing, permanent housing, as soon as possible. So I think there are a number of people in the community that are going to be moving ahead with some of those opportunities for us. What I will say, going back to our first field trip that some of the folks on this call attended in Columbus, how do we get this started? We thought, who's got a really good model? So we took a field trip over to Columbus to meet with the Community Shelter Board of Franklin County. We met with Michelle Heritage, who said, if you're going to go down this road, it's going to be difficult. It's a very difficult process to get these kinds of things going because there's many emotions, there's many differing opinions on this. And what she suggested is that a multi-sector group come together, form a formal organization similar to what they've done, and they've won all kinds of national recognition and awards. As that relates to the Newark City, all of you, we really need to have the city's commitment around this issue going forward. I think the mayor's on this call. He was on that field trip as well. And so we heard that from Michelle Heritage, that the city has to have a vested interest financially and emotionally at the table. The county needs to have a financial and emotional interest at the table, as well as business owners, as well as providers, as well as philanthropists, as well as first responders. All of those people need to be at the table in order for us to really adequately address the issue of eliminating chronic homelessness. Again, there's a lot of work for all of us. I think everybody on this call can get involved in some piece or part of this going forward. And I think after we have the meeting, Analytical Insight to come back and we ask who wants to be involved in what parts, and as we kind of get a group consensus and a countywide support for this process and accept that, hopefully it'll provide some more clarity around that. So Jeremy, I don't know if I've shared everything you've wanted me to share or if I'm answering any of the questions, but I would like to offer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I believe it's Melissa Lanter's hand raised. So if you could speak, I believe that will probably be, that might be our final question for the evening, as we do have another committee behind. But Melissa Lanter, if you could unmute and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Melissa Lanter. I am actually the community manager for Washington Square Plaza, John Sheets Building, and our East Newark townhomes on Washington and Eastern also. I am with Beacon 360 Management, our CEO, Miss Celia Kendall, and our COO, Miss Lisa Bennett, is on this call also. We kind of come from a different angle. We have had several issues because of our location. Right now where I'm at a senior building that we have on Eastern Avenue, which we've had several issues with homelessness, several thefts. We've had to put up exterior cameras now completely around the building. We've had to remove shrubs, just visual things. And we've actually had to end up taking the rental office, myself and my assistant, to walk our residents to get their prescriptions at CVS and to walk them to the grocery store right behind us at Save-A-Lot. So we're looking, you know, on one side, but also we totally believe in community. And it's going to take all of us to work together to get this. I just, you know, I want them to, you know, everyone to understand where we are coming from. We do not get grants, anything. We run and paying all the bills with rent, any maintenance, anything. And for us to have to keep replacing things that are being stolen, that are being broken, and to actually have to put up extra things to help protect the seniors in the building and in the area, I think, you know, it's going to take all of us together to do that. Like again, I said that we are all, you know, for community and all of this. We've also had 2 overdoses that has resulted in death on our properties in the last month from homeless. And, you know, trying to explain this to our seniors, we are actually having family members now coming in and saying, I don't feel safe with my mom or my dad living there. And so we are losing that. You know, so we're needing help with, you know, the city council, with the safety committee, with everyone, but we also want to be part of the solution. And with that in mind, you know, working with that, you know, reaching out to whoever, so we can get those help that need help, but also protect the ones that need protected from, you know, the different things going on outside. So that's where we stand. You know, the money we've had to put out in the past month for a nonprofit has been a lot of money. And that is to try to keep our property, our residents safe, and everyone else in the community that the cameras or whatever reaches. But we do need your help on how to do this and protect everyone that needs protected and to help everyone that needs helped.
Ms. Tegmeyer, are there any closing thoughts, or if someone wants to get involved, what is the best way to reach out to you, or should they reach out to someone else? I'm assuming it might be you, but just wanted to clear that up before we finish up safety committee.
I'm sorry, Mark, were you asking me? Yes, if any,
well,
anyone has any questions, feel free. I will do my level best. I may not have all the answers, but I'll try and steer you in the right direction for sure. Certainly my direct line here at the office is 740-345-1970, extension 212. My email, which is frankly the best way to get me, is my name, DTEGTMEYER @lcchousing.org.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blake, I'll give you final comment. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm just concerned that there are other people on this call who are members of the task force who have not had an opportunity to. I see Linda Mossholder was on the task force, Celia Kendall was on the task force, and there's other people that served on the task force that are here that have not spoken yet. And so I would suggest, if we are cutting close to time, then we just recess and return after council, as we've done before.
True, and I've been checking. I haven't seen their hands raised if they wanted to speak. So I've been going back and forth, and I've tried to call on everyone that has not spoken yet, if that helps. But I have not seen any other raised hands from someone that hasn't spoken yet. Mr. Lang?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I've been on enough Zoom calls with my kids to see that it's hard for the teachers to see everybody with their hands raised. So appreciate your efforts tonight. I did have one follow-up question for Deb Dingus, if she's still on. Back when we started, it just occurred to me, back when we started this whole process, I recall a conversation we had right after I think you had had some conversations with some of the large employers out on the western end of Licking County. And I think, you had lamented that, they're sending all their money to Columbus, and, we're looking for us to take some steps in the right direction to be able to move some of that money and keep it here in Licking County and perhaps pull it out here to Newark. I just wonder, given all the efforts with the task force, have you been back to any of those employers? Have there been any, have you moved the needle at all with some of the stuff that we've done to perhaps, bring them back to the table?
So thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, when this process began and we started working on our homework prior to going over to Columbus, we started talking to similar organizations that are in Franklin County that are also funders of United Way. And we began to ask them questions about their possibility of funding efforts to help us to address homelessness in Licking County. Some of the comments and things that we got were affirming of our attempt to get organized, provide a consolidated plan, and to provide a process that would help us leverage more dollars. So we had conversations with a number of larger corporations who have provided lots of dollars to shelters in the Franklin County area, who have indicated that if we showed that there was interest and that there were partners at the table, including city council leaders, elected officials, first responders, providers, all of the folks that I had shared with you, a cross-sector approach, that they would be more likely to give dollars because you have a bigger bang for the buck. If you're just going to fund one program or this program or this program, how are you going to continue to ensure a non-duplication of services? How are you going to provide for a seamless strategy to address people all the way from unsheltered all the way to permanent housing? I think AI's report provides some of those solutions and some of those suggestions. But I think funders, Jonathan, to answer your question, are going to be more likely when they see that we can come together with a coordinated effort to provide dollars, because they do see that there are more investors, more people committed to the process rather than loosely affiliated providers and services, if that makes sense. And so my hope is that we can move closer to that and leverage. First of all, my goal has always been, how do we keep the dollars that we're getting? Deb Tegmeyer writes wonderful grants, has wonderful dollars coming into the Licking County Coalition of Housing. Salvation Army's doing a great job. We've got some great providers, but how do we connect all of that so that together we do a better job together to leverage more dollars? And that's my goal in this part of it, to go back to those funders and say, here it is, here's a plan, here's what we're going to do. Now, will you fund us? And I feel pretty confident that some of them are going to be on board with that once we are able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. I'll call on Linda Mossholder, and I'm sure probably the last question. We probably will need to cut in about 5 minutes so we can prepare for council at 7. Log off this call and log into the next. But Ms. Mossholder, if you would state your name and address, please.
Linda Mossholder, 224 Green Meadow Drive, Newark. Just 2 quick questions. One is, what is the status of this task force? I have been a task force member. Are we still having a task force, or has that been dissolved? And the second part of my question is with, when we entered into the agreement with Lucan Solutions, that was for the precise purpose of having somebody who has expertise in operating, has previously operated a low barrier shelter. Do we have a similar person who will be working with the small group that Dan is going to be working with that expertise? Because a low barrier shelter is different from what basically Salvation Army is currently doing, or the men's shelter. So we do need somebody with that background who understands the need for supportive services, social work experience that, so those are two things that I have, some concern about, because we don't need just more beds. We just need, somebody who has the experience in working with people who are coming off the street as they are. You're not asking for ID, in some cases, not even doing a criminal back check. They may have active addiction. One of the things that would have been helpful is to have Sally present her training, and it was community acceptance plan, I guess, because what I'm hearing is we don't know how the community is going to react, especially if it's a low barrier shelter, and we need to be prepared to answer questions. So, and just one other thing is Sally did in her contract agree to provide a summary of her findings. So I don't know if she has done that.
Thank you, Ms. Mossholder. I don't know if, Deb, did you want to speak to any of those points?
Just a couple of them, but when it comes to where the low barrier shelter is going next and how that's going to be configured, that is not in my department. But as far as Sally is getting me a bunch of things. So I mean, she already provided quite a bit, but she's going to get me others. So once we're done with that, she did a pretty good job, very good job, frankly. She was very professional this whole time. She is going to fill me in on the materials that were provided to the advisory team and the minutes and that kind of stuff that was associated with that specific. The advisory team that was created, Sally created, is different than the tactical team or this whole task force. This was a much smaller group that she wanted to work with specifically. So she's going to get me all of that information. So hopefully what she described as, I forgot the word you just said, Sally, the
community acceptance plan?
No, the other
summary.
Summary. Yeah. I mean, she was doing summaries of things as she went. So I have confidence that she will get us everything relative that I will in turn over to whoever is going to run with this next.
Anything else, Ms. Tegmeyer?
No.
Okay, all right. At this point, I do need to suspend our safety committee meeting so that we can prepare for council, because that's actually on a different Zoom call. So we will have council meeting in the next 5 or 6 minutes at 7 p.m. and reconvene with committees after council this evening. So thank you for all for being here, and we will move to the council call. Thank you.